Hello, everyone, and welcome to Industries Live. If you haven't joined us before, well, this show is every other Tuesday, every 2 weeks. We interview and spotlight some really interesting AWS partners, and what we do is we talk to them about what's happening specifically in their industry and with industry-specific solutions that are really transforming the way the industry works. They're running on AWS, and that our AWS teams and them are working together to really move the industries forward in that way. My name is Jason O'Malley. I'm a global partner solutions architect, and I'm part of our global industry partnerships team. And as I mentioned, so we are live. And so if you want to drop a note in the chat, we'll be reading the chat during the session. I'll tell you where I'm from just to start the conversation. So I'm broadcasting here from Chicago area, although I'll be in Los Angeles later. And then with that, one other thing I'll mention is we do stream every other 2 weeks. So I'll QR code up in the right-hand corner. So what that does, if you click that, that'll help you know and be alerted when we've got new episodes coming up, so you can be reminded and tune in. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to my esteemed colleague, Addie, to say hello as well. Oh, Addie, I think you might be on the mute.
There we go. Thanks, Jason. I'm Adi Dubashi. I lead partner solutions for financial services at AWS. Our team specifically focuses on working with our technology partners, our consulting partners, to solve for line of business use cases that really matter to our customers. They're looking for those specific solutions that can help them with their business goals and not kind of only focus on the technical components. So I'm always excited about these episodes because we're talking about how we're going to solve for these use cases, applying the combination of AWS with our partnerships. And to kick us off today, we have some really exciting discussions with the IBM team, followed by the Temenos team. I'm here in New York. The weather's super sunny and exciting. We just came out of some rain, so really excited for this conversation. And I think there's going to be some immense insights that we get through the discussion today. So with that, I think let's get the IBM Symphony team on. Hao, Michael, we're looking forward to have the discussion with you today. Thank you for joining us.
Hello.
Hello, everybody. Yes, my name is Hao Zhou from IBM. I'm the Program Director, Product Owner of IBM Symphony and IBM RSF. It's my pleasure to share a bit more details about this product, technology, and how this works on AWS.
Thank you, Hao. Michael, you want to say a quick hello as well?
Yes. Hi, I'm Michael Feiman. I'm leading architect for the IBM Spectrum Symphony, and I will help Hao to introduce Symphony as a product.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah, great to have you both today. Thanks for joining this. We've been looking forward to this discussion. One of the things I mentioned, this is our industry show. We do spotlight a different industry every episode. And so this episode is on financial services and the insurance industries. I was curious, would Michael or Hao, could you level set a bit about the part of the industry that you focus on and, help the viewers that maybe aren't in the industry understand some of the landscape changes that are happening at the moment?
Yes, of course, love to. So as I said, I'm the product owner of IBM Symphony and IBM RSF. These two products focus on two different industry areas, and we focus on Symphony today. Symphony is designed originally for financial services, handling client risk, market risk, equity, all these different applications. Whenever financial services need to deal a huge amount of workload in a very short given time on a large scale environment, that's where Symphony fits in. This technology, yes, was designed for financial services, but it's not limited to that area. When we say short, huge amount, short running task, workload, and large scale, we're talking about the amount of workload can be 100 millions a day. We talk about more than 5,000 to 10,000 compute hosts in one single environment. We talk about more than 100,000 cores in one grid. And we talk about more than 1 million cores in a combined environment, all managed by Symphony for one single workload types. So Symphony is designed originally, as we said, for financial service purpose, but going on the long way, we add a lot more function onto it. We have big data support. We are now looking into AI support there. We target to position Symphony as a computing resource management plus the workload management to deal with all different types of workloads running on the heterogeneous infrastructure and hybrid environment there. And then Michael is our senior architect at CSM. I hope Michael add more colors to this product.
Yes, so Symphony, we like to think about it as a middleware platform where you can bring multiple types of workloads, and it's all multi-tenant, each tenant onboarding, getting its own rules to be added to the general policy of resource sharing, and then each application getting its own schedulers, and as Hao said, it's going to run millions of tasks. And it's all governed by Symphony. It's all has reclaim policies and resource sharing policies, and extendable to different types of workloads.
Yeah, when we move this into the cloud platform, it's not only about how to manage the computing resources, not only about how to manage the workload in the cloud environment. It matters how you can quickly get your cloud computing resources, make this available for your workload need. So Symphony builds dynamic scaling capabilities, which can grow your Symphony cluster, which we said cluster grid or a distributed environment HPC cluster. All this work can use there. When you want to grow down from 0 compute node to get 100,000 cores joined from cloud to this computer environment to serve your workload, so your workload can finish within SLA. So that is the technology we built into Symphony in the last couple of years.
And this is so fascinating, right? And just for the audience, I think we must put it in perspective of what it means. We're talking about the most sophisticated risk models that are being run in the world. We're talking about the computation of Monte Carlo simulations that are necessary, value at risk models that these financial institutions run across capital markets on the buy side or the sell side. We're talking about banks that have to calculate their risk dynamically, taking in multiple sources of data and seamlessly being able to know the risk on their books at any instant. And so how some of the metrics you called out are absolutely mind-blowing. We're talking about the ability to take that massive amount of risk modeling complexity, break down that task into targeted compute workloads, and slice them up such that they can distribute amongst 100,000 cores across these machines. And all of that has a capacity limitation of 1 million cores that can spin up. I mean, these numbers are absolutely mind-blowing. Tell us a little more about, what does that flow look like when Symphony is currently being used, when we're going to take, the power of Graviton, which brings 40% more efficiency onto the cloud. Would love to get that kind of full picture run through of how Symphony spins up for these use cases.
Yes, certainly. I can start. Michael, please add if I miss anything. So when you deploy a Symphony cluster in the cloud environment, so we're not talking about on-prem. On-prem, you'll have a fixed compute resources and you know what you have. But on cloud, you deploy Symphony with a very minimum deployment, which contains only this, we call the management node or primary node, contains the management services and the most important scheduling services there. Take about only 2 or 3 management nodes. And starting from there, when our customers submit the workload into this small environment, when we say workloads, as we mentioned the numbers already, each single compute task, a computing request can be sub-second, can be even 50 milliseconds. We're not talking about a workload submit there and running for 1 hour. We talk about 100 million computing requests come into this environment, and each single task only need to take 50 milliseconds to complete. How you can make the best utilize of your computing resources. So starting from there, Symphony knows the workload status and make a decision at the runtime quickly, immediately, how many extra compute resources we will need, and how to trigger the dynamic provision to get resources from the cloud environment, not including Graviton. Graviton is currently is available on AWS Marketplace as an offering, or you can check. And once you enable that and configure Symphony, Symphony will be able to make decisions based on a couple of factors. One is current workload to finish. Second is when and how this workload should be finished. The third is what types of Graviton or other VSI instances are available. Based on those, Symphony makes smart decision, try to provision the right amount of compute resources so you don't waste your money, so you can save your time and get that available immediately to this cluster. And what's more interesting is when your workload finishes gradually, Symphony detects the workload status and sets the watermark and gradually release the cloud resources back to the cloud so you don't waste your money on the unused part.
That's really fascinating. I'll mention too for the viewers, just in case if they haven't heard of the Graviton before. You did a great job explaining it, but it is AWS custom silicon and it's ARM based, and so because of that, it has price performance advantages. And I imagine at the scale you're talking about with 100,000 cores, going towards 1 million cores, that can really make a major difference. And having the capacity to scale up to that amount is something that's really possible with the infrastructure AWS has. I'm curious, just from myself not coming from industry, you mentioned the need for all of those requests to come in and the compute to be needed. Any context you'd share with the viewers about what type of scenarios come that they have to spin up that level of compute?
Andy give a good example is for we can use that for the financial service like application Monte Carlo or a market risk. When the stock market opens or closes at a certain time, you have a huge amount of data to process. You have a huge amount of computing risk simulation workload to finish, and you must finish those workload, huge amount. We talk about 100 million, and again, by a certain time. If you don't get the result by the time, all the effort wasted. So it matters how quickly you can get the compute resource you need and how fast you can proceed your workload by leverage all these compute resources you have. So high performance, high throughput, and high utilization is what Symphony can bring to our customers.
And that elasticity of the cloud to scale up for those key moments and not necessarily needing it the entire day, but when you need it, like you said, on the market close, you need it at that moment. So that's a great explanation.
Yep. And it's so fascinating because of the way in which we've made it really easy together with the IBM Spectrum Symphony team to have it on Marketplace. So one of the main strengths is the AWS Marketplace allows for very easy trial, adoption, deployment, spin up, and we're talking about the access to this compute at very large scales. And AWS brings that available spot market that allows you to kind of get compute at the right price point to scale up. But Michael, you've been right at the heart of this. You've been engineering this as it got deployed. Tell us, what the journey was like, and what does it mean for the market to have this available today?
Yes. So Symphony is a heterogeneous system. It can run different operating system, different hardware. Right, so bringing Graviton to the picture is giving our customers flexibility to start writing applications on Graviton, to take in all the advantages of Graviton, and also gradually migrate. Right, so in Symphony you have multiple applications, multiple resources, and you can control which applications start using Graviton and migrate to it eventually. Right, so that's bring flexibility to the customers. Another thing I want to mention in the scenario Hao was talking about is fault tolerance. So Symphony, when it's allocating resources, does not fully realize that it will be available all the time. So for example, sports resources in cloud, right? So if resources go away for whatever reason, we have whole fault tolerance, requeuing and retrying to get new resource replacement and run workload to finish it by that deadline.
And I want to be mindful of time, but I think this is so important. The ability to pause a massive workload of that level of parallelism, being able to kind of make sure that can be shelved and then brought back at that speed. I mean, these are speeds and scales that just aren't common at all, and only in financial services, in these risk modeling systems, do we get that opportunity. But I'm really happy that we have it on marketplace today. Customers can deploy seamlessly as they need, and that allows us to scale our strong partnership. So really appreciate, Michael, Hao, for you joining and sharing this story.
Thank you, Andy. Thank you, Jason.
Thank you so much for joining. It was great to see you both, and then your colleagues from the other part of IBM are going to join on now for the second half. So thanks so much, Michael and Hao. And then with that, Girish and Babu, welcome to our show.
Hi.
Hey, both. Welcome.
Howdy from
welcome
Texas.
to Live. Girish and Babu, you want to say a quick hello to the audience and let them know a bit more about your role at IBM?
Absolutely. Babu, why don't you go first and then I'll kind of follow up, yeah?
Sure. Hey, good morning, everyone. Babu Anantharaman. I'm project executive at IBM Consulting. As part of my role, I take care of the delivery of all the projects for our customers.
Thanks, Babu. Hey, I'm Girish Ratnam. I run our IBM Consulting insurance industry, spend all my time with insurance clients all across the country, understanding their problems, trying to see what they're up to and how we can help them as IBM Consulting.
Fantastic. And then, your colleagues were just on talking about their sector of the business. Would you want to help orient our audience about the focus that you have specifically at IBM?
Sure. I think somebody backstage mentioned that AI is like a bowl of cereal. The first thing people talk about is AI. I want to use that quote in this conversation. But that aside, every insurer I talk to today is talking about AI. But the difference between 2025 and 2026 is twofold. First is it's about scaling pilots. How do you go from the use cases, the pilots, to truly reimagining what the world looks like? The second aspect that insurers are looking at is two pieces. It used to be, how do I take operational costs out? That was the focus of AI in 2025. This year, it's more about two pieces. How do I improve my top line, right? And how do I take operational costs out? So I was talking to one of these insurers, the CEO of one of these insurers. He goes, we are a shop of about 500 people. I want to grow my revenue 10x with the same headcount. So how do I apply AI to grow my revenue while at the same time keep my operational costs down? That's the focus. Customer experience is a massive aspect of what clients are looking for. We did a study, and I wrote a blog about this, and I think we can post the blog at the end of this session, but 75% of insurance executives are focused on customer experience, okay? 70% in 2026 are focused on operational cost takeout. So that's the transition from 2025 and 26 in insurance, and we'll talk more about it with relation to a global client that we're working with to help manage their expectations, manage their customers' experiences as well.
And Girish, I think you're calling out some really important insights here, right? I think there's this trend that's played out in insurance is moving a lot faster than it has before. In the past, what we'd have is banking and capital markets customers. They had this massive engineering muscle. Did
we lose that? There we go, Eddie. I think we just had a little internet blip.
Oh,
you're back now.
Yeah, sorry about that. So I think one of the main patterns that we have to look for is the ability to help these insurance customers in a rapid way, a way by which they can,
Oh, it's cutting out just a little bit.
I think I got the gist of it. Adi, you're
if you want to
out,
pick it up from there, Girish. Yeah.
So you're absolutely right. Speed is of essence, right?
What is the customer case study that you share in this space?
Oh, Eddie, your connection's just dropping a little bit. So I think Girish is he's going to jump into I think because we were talking about the example that Girish is going to talk about.
So speed is of essence, right? And speed is of essence because insurers, their biggest interaction with their customers is at the time of pain or infliction, right? Something's happened that they need to call their insurer for something. So our customer's customer okay, are either calling and saying, I had an accident, I need to put a claim in. I had a death in the family, I need to put a claim in. You can't have that customer, my customer's customer, wait for 90 days for a claim to be paid out because they lost a loved one. The first interaction has to have a lot of empathy, okay, in those cases. So empathy today is human, okay, today. Okay. Now, how can we make that claim go faster so that instead of 80 days, that claim gets paid out in 7? Babu, you worked on with a large insurance client, okay, helping them transform their claims process. Talk to us about it, and talk to us about the AWS partnership and how that helped you.
Yeah, absolutely. So, as part of the claims processing, it's a critical area from a optimization with AI, because it's a manual intensive exercise, and it's prone for errors and huge review delays and those kind of things. So when we looked at it as a holistic picture from claims initiation till the payment gets paid for the beneficiary. What are the processes in between, and how we can digitalize customer centric and get the decision making faster by using AWS. And that's where we partner with AWS and work with them to get this technical aspects of the architecture, how to put it. And really, we used AWS Bedrock and Agent Core on a LangGraph development platform. The real thing is, we are the first one to work with AWS to launch Agent Core into production, and that really helped us from that partnership point of it.
That's a great overview. And for the audience, just in case, for anyone that hasn't known it, like you with IBM leading the way here, so Agent Core is one of our managed services to really help make that management and deployment of agents much more easy and effective, so you don't have to do as much of the heavy lifting. So it's great to hear that you were able to lead the way and really get that out there in the industry first.
Yeah.
And I think there's one more important aspect in here, right? I think we're seeing these workflows transform at a speed that hasn't happened before. We're seeing very niche products and offerings that we're now building with our partners that can speed up efficiency. Let's say in the case of document processing, what used to have say 85% efficiency in the past, today with our agentic architecture with fully governed deployments of these agents, you're able to parse these workloads with a 99% efficiency in the extraction of the documents. This is where our fintech partners and the AWS partner network support. And then bringing that entire process together, the workflow layer, is so important. And so it's about making sure that we're offering customers the choice to buy what's available instead of kind of build this from scratch, but then also compose the right component parts of it, whether you're looking at the agent side, whether you're looking at optimizing the workflow, and really get that kind of step-by-step value. Girish, you've been a thought leader in this space. How do you articulate this value to the business users? What's the message to the customer personas that you interact with, and who are they? So we can kind of think through that entire flow.
See, I think that's the point that I was trying to kind of get in, which is in this space, two pieces. Customer experience is critical. So when I talk to our clients, the folks that I'm talking to are the chief claims officer, right? The chief operating officer. They're interested in. There are two pieces of what they're interested in. How fast can we go? Okay, show me, don't tell me. Okay, and let's get this on the road, done and delivered. It used to be 6 months, a year. Now they're saying, hey, what can we get out? And let's do an end-to-end process reimagination to drive a full-scale transformation rather than take one piece of a workflow and transform it. That's one, right? So thanks to the partnership, we've actually taken the work we've done with this particular client and made it an asset. So our next implementation for our clients goes faster, right? It took us 6 months to get this one done, and Agent Core at that time was relatively new. We have scars from learning, working with your team on how to kind of put this in place, and now we know how to do it, right? We were the first ones who were there, and now this is an asset. Now we can take it in, and within 90 to 120 days, be in production if our clients' systems are ready. Tech debt is always an issue, but I tell my clients, don't wait for tech debt or you'll be waiting forever. That's the key in this space.
And I think I've noticed this before, right? Which is that when we've got the strong foundations of the partnership, you really are able to maximize on the investment programs available. So, in this case, the IBM team doubled down with AWS with the agentic process transformation funding, where we applied ourselves to do an assessment across the entire cycle. This is where we understand the business outcomes that our customers expect, and then working to create an accelerator that can support future customers in the same way. So helping customers, making sure that pattern has the best practices available along the assessment framework, using funding structures to reduce that cost for the proof of concept, to kind of shape this early on. But that repeatability stays within your organization's expertise, and you're then able to continue expanding on it, coming with a library of offerings to your future customers. And that's part of our joint business outcome accelerator program as well, that kind of funds and supports these. So for our partners who are interested, do check out the business outcome accelerator funding. Girish, sorry, a shameless plug in there to kind of talk about that.
I would have done that too.
Well, it's good to, not only your accelerator is going to help the next one move faster, but the funding helps it move faster. And that's really the two teams really working together is our goal. I'm curious, we've had a power-packed session with the IBM team today. We've got just a few minutes. I was curious, Girish or Babu, any closing thoughts for the audience about, what to take away, what to think about?
Babu, why don't you go first, and then I'm going to...
Yeah, sure. I mean, at the end of the day, based on this solution, what we have delivered, it's a joint partnership. And the real thing is how these assets can be taken into the other customers and deploy. At the end of this platform gives us a kind of a comprehensive, right, from deploying and operating on a highly AI agents on a security at scale, right? And we just look holistically because it's a highly regulated environment, and it's important for us to thought through everything. So our assets comes with all those bells and whistles in terms of handling the security and aspects of it as well. Girish.
Girish, I want to get your view. You're a thought leader in this space. You've always been kind of at the forefront of some of the insurance workflows. What's coming in the next 12 to 18 months as we continue to build these agentic architectures?
I believe this agentic architecture is going to take over. It's not about cost takeout, human takeout. It's about augmented intelligence, not artificial intelligence. It's about making sure the humans that work in the insurance space are empowered and have the right information on their fingertips to make the right decisions. It's about having, the partnership together. And the one last thing, Adi, I'll kind of do a plug. We are stronger together. The partnership funds you brought about for us was fantastic. It really helped us fast track this and pull a business case together. We're repeating this at other clients and larger insurance clients, and we're looking forward to doing that. So thank you for that.
Thank you. And then, Girish, Babu, we're just about out of time, but this was such a great conversation. Thanks for just enlightening us about that. And it's really insightful just to hear how you're leading the way on Agent Core and the next steps you'll be taking with that together with AWS. So with that, thank you both for joining us today. And we will be back after a second. We're going to reset our graphics, and we'll come back and we'll have Stewart from the Temenos team will be joining us. So with that, thanks again, Babu and Girish, and
thanks for
viewers. We'll be right back. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Industries Live. If you're just joining us or if you joined us part the way through the hour of streaming, what Industries Live is every 2 weeks on Tuesdays at 8 a.m. Pacific time. What we do is we stream for an hour. We have these really great in-depth live conversations with some of our partners that are really leading and pushing the industries forward by using solutions that are built on AWS, and that the AWS teams and the partners are working together to really drive those forward with customers, and to really spotlight them, get those insights. Hey, what are the partners seeing within the industry, and how are they looking to look and help move the industry move forward using cloud technology? So my name again is Jason O'Malley. I'm a global partner solutions architect, part of our industry partnerships team. We are live, so if you have comments in the chat, please feel free. We are monitoring. Tell us where you're watching from. I'm streaming from Chicago. And one more plug, we have a QR code here. So if you're looking to be reminded about upcoming shows for our Industries Live, click that QR code and you'll be taken to our event page for more info there. And without further ado, I'll pass it over to Addy to say hello again.
Thanks, Jason. Excited about this next episode. We've done this series for some time now, so I'm always excited to think about those new possibilities with our partners. My name is Addy Dubashi. I lead partner solutions at AWS, specifically focused on the financial services industry. And so when we think about partners, we're thinking about combining those ISV technology partners, our consulting partners and their capabilities, and bringing it all together to solve for those line of business needs that customers have, those use cases they care about, not the features alone that kind of solve for specific tasks. And so I'm really excited about the conversation today, where we're going to talk about core banking, where it's come from, where it's going, and Temenos, who's been right at the heart of this process, helping customers. So excited to have Stewart on. Maybe get Stewart on the
With that, we'll welcome Stewart to the show. Stewart.
Hello, both. I made it into the show.
Good
to see you both. And thanks for the introduction, Addy. Very much appreciated.
And Stewart, you want any other points you'd like to say to introduce yourself?
I guess just in terms of my perspective, and it's only just in preparation for this, I just realized that this year is 25 years I've been in financial services. So started in a bank, then moved across to software sales and then BPO, and now bringing that together in the SaaS world that we're going to talk about today. But I guess principally from my role in Temenos is to work with clients across the globe to understand what they need from our SaaS offering. Clearly, it's focused on hitting their business objectives, but also importantly now is equal consideration or potentially greater consideration to the regulatory obligations that they have. So I think that's a really key first part of what I do. But then I think the second part is about thinking about how banks consume our SaaS service. So the co-design that we have with AWS and allowing banks to consume a trusted service, which I think we can talk more about later, about what defines trust. But looking at that from the database to the API endpoint. So, the infrastructure and the cloud provision from AWS combined with the software that we provide and how it hits those objectives. So that's really sort of the two main focus points in terms of my role.
Fantastic. And I guess just level setting a bit for anyone that's not as steeped in the industry, any context you would add about where Temenos sits within the landscape of technology solutions within banking?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So look, from my perspective, and again, trying to be objective about this, I do genuinely believe that Temenos and the partnership with AWS is fundamental to the banking industry. So Temenos operates globally in over 145 countries, and we've been operating core banking software now for over 30 years. So I think that presence and that industry knowledge and insight is critical in terms of our mission of leading banking forwards and supporting how our banks and our customers deliver to their end customers, whether they're retail, corporate, or wealth. And I think, the way that we've seen this evolve and leading into the relevant trends is maybe up to the beginning of 2020, there was that kind of big move to the cloud that was being adopted. Maybe SaaS was being adopted for some non-critical elements, such as, or non-client facing critical elements, such as HR, procurement, those types of things. But I think what we're seeing now is that move and that convergence of banks, regulators, and technology all really driving to banks wanting to consume SaaS because of that open approach. And it's kind of the shift I think we made from going from branch to telephone banking to digital banking is kind of seeing this move in this area as well. So I think that's kind of the landscape in terms of the trends. That word's going to come up again in terms of trust. I think resilience is probably one of the biggest conversations I have with clients across the globe. And as I'm sure has been mentioned on almost every topic you've done, certainly in the last year, is AI. But I'm hoping to bring a slightly different perspective on when we get round to that topic.
Yeah, and I think the interesting part here is just the speed with which banking systems have needed to modernize. We're talking about systems that have had to exist for 100+ years. Starting from the days of the monolith and the mainframe, making sure that then they were available again with that resilience in more composable architectures, all the way through open API frameworks and open banking that came around. And Temenos has been there, kind of making sure that modernization continues, being there as a single platform that brings it all together, but then also making sure that as new regulations came around, whether that's the open API frameworks, open banking guidelines, the entire platform's ready for it. And we're talking about the full spectrum of features, all the way from fraud detection modules to the core banking and general ledger itself, to customer experience and journey manager. So, you guys really have a wide portfolio here, kind of available to fit every need that customers have. And so, would love to know, what are you hearing from customers? Resilience is something you called out. What is top of mind for them, and where's modernization taking place in the banking sector today?
So I think it's across the board in terms of the modernization. And I think what we've seen is a shift in that conversation. So I think the real shift in the conversation is from banks. And the bit that's really stood out to me is how they now want to adopt. And I think that's always been in the discussion, but it hasn't always been front and center. And I think adopt is helping them gain access to all of those benefits that you were just talking to about, whether it's about using open APIs, whether it's about helping them with resilience, because the more the bank can consume and adopt a service from their vendors, the more the control they have about how quickly they can react, because then they've got a better chance to always be current, to use best-in-class technologies, to use best-in-class practices and processes. So I think, focusing on that adopt, and, we used to have a lot of requests for customizations. And now, in some deals over the last year, I've seen a CEO of a bank send out an email saying he would rather change the internal business process than accept a customization request. And we also had a governance board for another client halfway through implementing. And he was really pleased and appreciative of the fact that we had said no and pushed back to every request for customization. And I think going back to your piece about, modernization, whether, and all banks are looking at it in slightly different lens, but whichever modernization lens you look at, they're investing significant time and money to go through that transformation and that modernization program. And I think the overriding lesson that's been learned is they don't want to create that new legacy. They want to be able to focus on adopt. And adopt brings so many benefits in terms of reducing costs, reducing risk, allowing you to have greater control so you can demonstrate to your regulator. But it also means that you can move quickly. Another one of our clients has, between us, has said that one of their biggest teams now is their orchestration team, so that they can quickly react to whatever their internal business, the CEO or the marketing or the product team say that they need to release. And they can do that so much quicker now, because they're not trying to trace back through to legacy integrations and legacy coding, which typically was, a bit of a barrier to some of those things. So I would say across that, and supporting what you said, Adi, I think that significant mind shift to adopt is becoming one of the biggest keys to the modernization programs that we're seeing.
And it's a very insightful trend you called out, Stewart. So when I was at a large bank before AWS, one of the main things that would take place is these constant bespoke build out exercises. Customizations were necessary. They said, well, we're very unique. We cannot go with standardized tools, and we need to build this out. But with it came the need to all continuously maintain these systems. So every time a regulation changes, every time some guidelines are updated, you need to kind of rebuild that entire system. And that is undifferentiated heavy lifting that these customers had to pick on. With Temenos kind of supporting customers, bringing those fully ready, proven capabilities, it really helps customers adopt a proven best practice and then move faster to market. And I think that's something we've seen happen across financial services. Those who are taking validated patterns, making sure that those blueprints are applied very quickly, but making sure that they focus on their core aspects of their business instead of kind of going through bespoke kind of technology build-outs. They're moving faster and gaining the benefits of the newer tools and the newer capabilities that come along.
No, 100%. But I would just call out, though, agree with everything you just said, but I think also, and clearly it's easy on this type of discussion to get very, focused on the technology. But I'd also like to say, for example, when DORA was being implemented across Europe, and we've done the same with other regulations, whether it's CPS 230 in Australia or B10 in Canada, etc. But one of the benefits the banks get of our partnership is, I remember attending and working with AWS in Brussels when DORA was going through in terms of the consultation, what this might look like in terms of how it impacts vendors delivering that service to banks. So I think it is key to think about it across all of those elements in terms of that achieving the business outcomes and getting those objectives, but also the regulatory obligations. And I think from my perspective, and certainly from our conversations across Temenos and AWS, we're actually seeing more convergence on those things driving the same outcomes, maybe coming from very different perspectives, but they're all really focused on how we drive those outcomes. So, but absolutely.
And I was curious, just I'm from the solutions architect perspective. I was intrigued by you had mentioned resilience earlier, talking also about the regulatory landscape and that culture change within banks to really get more comfortable with adoption. I'm curious, any more you can double click on in terms of resilience and how you talk to those customer executives about that and get them comfortable with this shift?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And on that point, in talking about the shift, I think the biggest shift when we're having these conversations is the cultural shift in the bank, that they go from owning and managing the service to consuming it and needing to have oversight and demonstrating control. And that's a real organizational change across their risk management team, their data protection team, their regulatory team, as well as, of course, their operations and their IT team. So I that cannot be overstated in terms of the piece, and it's often one of the first conversations that we have. But that said, in terms of the resilience, it's a real power of three team effort between Temenos, AWS, and the bank, because resilience really is looked at in terms of the potential customer detriment, and so all three have a part to play in that. And I think there's been a bit of a history across resilience that certainly recent regulations, as I previously mentioned, have really helped us to focus on in terms of that end impact and customer detriment. So I think it's fair to say that really resilience was originally focused primarily on how many data centers you had and how far apart they were, and where would you move your people if the electricity went out in the building. That was pretty much the extent of some of the business continuity planning that was being done across most industries, to be fair. I think now what we're looking at, and certainly what a number of regulators are looking at, is getting banks to identify their critical or important business functions. And so, for example, they might have a really different view on the resilience that's needed if you're running a high volume of payments that are going to be used at the checkout point, and making sure that those are up and running, versus how you solve for a mortgage. If you don't need that same level of resilience and cost and those risk options, is now about how do you make sure it's appropriate for that critical or important business function, and how important that would then be to the detriment of your customer. So there is very much a focus across all customers, I think, and from your side as well, about that always on and importantly zero loss. So even if the system does go down, making sure none of those transactions are actually lost, that then once the system's back up again, they can be caught up on. So I think that's really now where the shift in focus on is. It's not just about the platform generically being there. It's about those important business functions and how that then fits into the resilience model.
And I think this is exactly where the partnership again kind of shines through and supports customers. One of the features we offer is called the experience-based acceleration exercise. And so, we often would meet with customers who are in this state where they're like, hey, I really need to have a resilient platform. We've been on-prem for a long time. We're curious about the cloud, and we need to be there in order to make most of AI, truly transform our workflows. But how do we do that? And so one of the first things we set up is we'll set up workshops to brainstorm and assess this, bringing those regulatory teams, those product teams, those engineering and architecting teams all in one room. And we'll kind of set up these small multi-team workshops that are called the experience-based accelerator. What we cover during these cycles is this exact step-by-step process. So the goal first is let's draw out what is resilient architecture, and we'll bring forth patterns that have been proven out for regional availability, those 11 nines of availability that AWS brings with our architecture and infrastructure. But then after that, how do you configure for data residency? How do you make sure that you're compliant with the necessary regulations across PSD2, open banking guidelines, and API frameworks? And so having those patterns really accelerate our customers. But you're also doing something very important, and that kind of comes down to the change management aspects, Stewart, you touched on. Because when you bring that technology team, you're bringing the team that owns the process, and you're bringing the regulatory and compliance team. They're all joined up in trying to figure out how to solve it. And so that actually drives a massive amount of change management that's necessary. You're not building in isolation and then getting it checked with peer groups in the other parts of the organization. The accelerator is the function that brings these kind of teams across several functions and domains to sit together and think about what that reimagined future is, along kind of the single shared North Star, which is we need a resilient architecture available for the modern state of banking, fully composable and easy to deploy with a resilient architecture that's in line with the regulation. So one of the asks that customers often have is, can we set up an experience-based accelerator? It's normally a 3 to 4 week exercise, and we very much kind of support this as part of the partnership. So I wanted to kind of share that specific methodology that's applied, and it really helps customers who are kind of getting started, and they get hands-on and they're solving for this end-to-end. So one more kind of aspect of the partnership that we're able to invest in as part of our go-to-market.
No, I think so, Adi. And I think just to build on that and bring me back to the point that I raised at the beginning about, what we look at as the trust criteria. So around how we demonstrate to clients how we manage, store and process data, how we keep it secure, how we help them achieve regulatory obligations, and about how we support them in their resilience objectives. So I think those 4 things coming together. And I think that's one of the insights that can't be overstated is that combination that we bring between us in terms of the global presence that we both have, the working relationships with either regulators, central banks, legislation in different countries, so that you can bring all of those things together. Because it's a bit like squeezing a balloon. If you think you've solved for something, then something else comes out the other side and you realize, oh, actually, what I haven't done is covered for that as much as I need to. So I think, having that conversation and bringing together that domain knowledge is really important, because when our clients are consuming our combined SaaS offering, they get that platform investment of AWS in the security, the resilience, all of those great things, plus then the R&D commitment from Temenos of 20% of our revenues into R&D, into our software, and all of that domain expertise and knowledge brings that value to the bank, whether they're trying to create a new proposition and grow, or whether they're trying to solve a problem. And by having the different design partner approaches that yourselves and we offer, I think it gives them that real opportunity to have that short sprint, look at what it could look like, take onto account those wider considerations, and really start to bring that together so that they have a holistic business case and taken on that combined learning experience that we have from across our respective estates.
I think it's interesting, kind of weaving all these threads together of the experience-based acceleration, and just talking about that cultural transitions and adjusting that. I'm curious too, with such a dynamic time in the industry, the inclusion of AI into these workflows as well. I'm curious, you mentioned that you had some insights there. I'm curious, any insights you'd share about how you're seeing that weave its way into the workflows and discussions?
Yeah, I mean, I think so from our perspective, I think most of the conversations we're having with our banking customers, or banking, wealth, payments, the broad term, but is how they can use AI to help maximize the use of our SaaS service. So how do they get the most out of it by using AI? Because I think there is one context here about now almost every product has an AI element to it. So there is that element of banks, needing to bring together AI platforms and how do they aggregate that up and come to a common solution. And I think that's one of the things from my perspective is I think that AI increasingly is about how we deliver our services and help the banks to maximize it. So, a couple of examples, that we've gone through. So FCM, and where we've used AI to reduce the false positives. So that's in our financial crime mitigation. So, making sure that the process that we've gone through is explainable, but really reducing that level of false positives. So, it's self-learning, it's making sure that they're reviewing the deals. Now, the benefit this has is twofold at a high level. The first one is those ones that can be easily solved are being, and therefore there's a better customer experience for that person or that business trying to use the service. The second part is that then the people that they have in the business can really focus on the positives that are causing the real issues and making sure they're focusing their time and energy onto the right thing. So there's ones like that we see where AI helps to speed up and helps to deliver that service. The next one that I would look at then is where we're looking at, a product builder approach. So we're using that now in our core banking system. So it allows product managers to do this directly into the system. So using business terminology, not coding, not needing access to the systems, but it's really helping them to build the unique products they want to do, to be specific to their end customer, be it retail, corporate, or wealth. And then I think the final one, just to quickly touch on, is how we use AI to monitor our operations. So this is to improve the service quality, the improvements, making sure that we're fixing problems before they happen and before they have an impact. So it gives us that proactive move forward about making sure that the system is always on and moving towards that resilience goal. So again, they sort of loop back round to each other as well. And just critically to close off on this, at the moment, from our perspective, the important piece is that there's still the human in the loop and the governance of it in terms of how we use any subcontractors or process data. So those are all critical questions as well when we go through that AI. But those are the three sort of broad areas and broad examples that we're looking at of real world benefits of using AI.
That's a great overview. I think, like you said, it weaves in that resilience discussion. It's potentially delivering those outcomes for customers faster by reducing the technical barrier to deliver it, and then also the improving the quality of the assessments. It sounds like from like the financial crime analysis. So that's a good, really nice overview, especially for someone not in the industry to get a sense of it. So thanks for walking us through it.
And Jason, I think one of the fascinating spaces, right, when you think of, say, financial crime management and tools that are needed here, historically customers would say false flagging was just was overwhelming them. These flags seemed authentic. They would require massive amounts of human bandwidth to continuously validate each case. You have to report these to your regulator. You have to get down into the reports on how you did these. And some of the tools and capabilities being applied by partners such as Temenos are going to really help and transform the total insight that customers are able to get from their financial crime data, reduce false flags, but also make sure that over time, just as these tools emerge, bad actors are going to apply new ways in which they can do fraud and activate, different techniques for financial crime. And so kind of making sure that they maintain the air gap. We're continuously innovating with the Temenos team to kind of shape the right solutions here. This also kind of brings some of those points that you made, Stewart, back, which is it's really about making sure you're applying AI at each level of the stack. So you're kind of applying it at the productivity of your own tools and your own organization. It's at the customer side where the workflows themselves are going to undergo significant transformation, but the human in the loop is still there. The right best practices and case management and case decisioning history is always there for context when you're evaluating these false flags and scenarios that are going to play out. But then making sure that the next feature and the next idea and the next modernization is also applying AI so that you're rapidly transforming, moving what used to be 18-month and 24-month migration exercises down to a matter of months, because you're taking proven patterns, you're applying them, you're deploying SaaS, and you're making it really easy for customers to kind of apply what's already there instead of going out and building those bespoke complex systems themselves. So I think AI is just going to apply itself across all of these. And anyone who's not acting, there's a cost of missing out. There's a cost of not acting and saying, well, I'm going to sit on the sidelines and kind of see what plays out. That's a risk today because your competition kind of really makes most of it as another bank. And so, maximizing the ready solutions we bring can really accelerate our customers.
Absolutely.
I wanted to probably take this as a segue towards a looking forward picture. Temenos is someone who's really growing with us as a partnership. We were at TCF and made several announcements around the SaaS platform and deploying on AWS. We're on the AWS Marketplace with Journey Manager. And so for those who don't know, the AWS Marketplace brings a diverse base of technology platforms that customers can very quickly adopt and click through to get started. And we have ready solutions like Temenos Journey Manager available on Marketplace. So Stewart, I guess it's a bit of a wide question, but as you look out forward, 18 months, where are we going with this? We're looking at customers making it really easy for them to procure the best products, getting really easy to get started with SaaS ready platforms. The kind of bespoke build activity is reducing as customers take best practice platforms. Where do you see it going over the next 18 months in the banking space?
Yeah, and actually, Marketplace is a good segue as well, just to mention about, to bring some of that together. As you say, we're able to transact through Marketplace, which brings, a lot of benefits to our mutual customers out there. So, so looking 18 months out, I think the number one thing is how banks stay on that path for continuous modernization of their technology. And that's not just critical from a competitive position, but I think it's critical from a regulatory perspective and also from an agility perspective in terms of how they manage and also managing their risk. So I think that horizon of looking at how they build that out to help them to accelerate their pace of change. And I think by, using the Temenos and AWS enabled sort of set of ready for you services. So, we have enterprise services in our software, which are end-to-end journeys, which help banks to adopt those end-to-end flows for the most, common like deposits, mortgages, lending, those things that can really have quite a key structure to them. So I think by banks consuming those ready to use services, I think that enables that path to modernization. I would say that the two big things that come from that is the continued focus on resilience. And I really do think that adopt is a key to that. The more you adopt, the more you consume what's available, then that's that. And the second one is sort of going back to AI, but actually just going back a bit further than that. I think the big conversation, and certainly starting, is about, how are banks managing the data, that data that the AI is making its decisions on. So with that aggregation of AI platforms, I think now there's lots of different conversation, and I'm not going to get into it from a technology perspective, but about, how many databases there are, where does that single source of truth sit between a CRM system, a core banking system, a payment system, about how they can actually use that and how they can aggregate that data out. So I think the focus might actually shift a little bit less on the AI, because I think they're now seeing a trajectory, but it's really about where is that source of data that it's all based on. So I think those would be my three things: the path to modernization, adopt as a key to building that and resilience, and then the data that sits behind AI.
Stewart, thank you so much. We got so engrossed in our conversation. We're just out of time. Just thank you so much for joining from the Temenos side. Wonderful insights. We have to drop out. So I'll just say thanks to everyone for watching and have a wonderful rest of the day. We'll be back in 2 weeks. Thanks, everyone.